Good evening. Thank you for watching our briefing in English. I'm Leah Hogg. My guest today needs no introduction. Dr. Anne Fenech is with me, and she's a lawyer who specializes in marine litigation. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for joining the program.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you for your kind invitation. It's wonderful to be on your program. Thank you very much indeed.
I'd like to go back to how you started in this sector, and we're soon going to see a photo from 1986 when you first started. What attracted you to the sector?
Well, that's a really good question, because the truth of the matter is that I fell into shipping purely by accident. I qualified in 1986 at the same time that my husband-to-be qualified as a doctor in London. And we had planned to get married and move to London. So before I qualified, I actually applied for a job with a number of law firms. And one of them, Fenech and Willen, actually asked me to go in for an interview. And it turned out to be a marine litigation law firm. I had just qualified, 24, no experience in working abroad, and I think I happened to be at the right place at the right time. They gave me an opportunity. They gave me a one-year contract to look at all the council's opinions, because in England solicitors go to council for their opinion, and my job was to read through all of those council's opinions, prepare summaries, and this was 86, where everything was starting to go online. So, you know, at the end of that year, they were perfectly entitled to tell me, thank you very much, here's your fee, have a nice life. But they asked me to actually stay on as an associate, as a fee earner. And I ended up by spending 5 years at Fenech and Willen. As I said, it's an international maritime law firm. And it was a love affair which I started and which I am still very much involved in today. I've never done anything else since. Then, after 5 years with Holman's, my husband walked in one day and said, I'd like to do a fellowship in New Orleans in vitreoretinal surgery. And so we packed our bags and off went to New Orleans, and I was seconded from HFW to a law firm called Chaff McCall, because I was lucky, again, because New Orleans then was the second largest port in the United States. Lots of shipping law, lots of casualty work on the Mississippi. And
you were lucky because you got global experience,
yes,
really.
Yes, that is where I got really into collisions, pilotage and towage, because of the Mississippi sees an enormous amount of traffic coming down from the grain terminals out into the ocean, lots of casualty work, so that was great.
Why is Malta so important to the marine sector?
Well, we're having a look at that map. If we could go back to the map showing Malta in the middle of the Mediterranean.
It's
behind us, okay.
Yes.
Well, there we are. That is it. That picture tells 1,000 stories, really. If you look at the position of Malta, I mean, God decided not to give us any raw materials, but in my view, he gave us one of the best things ever. He gave us our geographical position. There we are, equidistant from Gibraltar, equidistant from Suez, from the shores of Europe and North Africa. And of course, that for thousands of years has meant that our destiny, our life is intrinsically linked with the maritime sector. So, you know, a lot of people think that the maritime sector is the maritime flag. Of course, that is one of Malta's many maritime facets. But Malta is so much more than that. In fact, if we start to roll the pictures which we have prepared, there we see Malta as a very important position, in a very important position when it relates to inter-country carriage of goods. That happens to be one of the main lines actually servicing the carriage of goods between Malta and mainland Europe. We, of course, have a thriving ship repair industry. And I think if we can start to roll the pictures, that would be good. There we can see another area of maritime Malta, which is bunkering. Mm-hmm. Bunkering is what happens when ships take their fuel. Mm-hmm. So again, because of our position bang in the middle of the Mediterranean, when ships are going from east to west and west to east, they don't have to deviate off their contractual route in order to pick up bunkers. So they stop off Malta to pick up their bunkers fuel. There we see a picture of a ship coming into Malta for repair, and that picture just gives you a very good idea of the depth of our Grand Harbour. Because apart from our geographical position, we also have one of the deepest harbours, natural harbours in the Mediterranean. And there you have it. So on the right-hand side of Valletta, we have Grand Harbour with all the heavy maritime industry. And of course, on the left-hand side, we have Marsamxetto Harbour, which today houses and has an enormous amount of yachts and a number of yacht marinas.
So our position allows us to offer unique services.
I would like to think that our position, and as maritime services have actually developed in Malta, this little rock of ours actually provides every single maritime service that you can think of to the international maritime community. There we see another facet of Maritime Malta, which is the cruise line business. Not only is Malta welcoming these cruise liners to our shores, so we see another facet of Maritime Malta, but it also happens to be very frequently en route, especially when Libya at one time had opened up to the cruise line business. Malta was a very cozy, nice stopover from Europe to the northern shores of North Africa, shores of North Africa.
You're mentioning the cruise line business, and it was something we're going to discuss. That's been hit very badly by COVID-19. How do you see it in the future? Do you see it reviving in the future?
Absolutely. The cruise line business, of course, as very much part and parcel of the tourism industry generally, was hugely hit by the COVID crisis. I'm sure the viewers remember that that was one of the first sights we got of COVID. Whilst we saw what was happening in China at the end of December of 2019, not even 2020, COVID hadn't really started in Europe and in America until we started to see the cruise liners in Japan. Do you remember?
Yes.
With the passengers being taken off because of COVID. And of course, it was all downhill from there. A number of cruise lines did not survive. A number of cruise lines that were very, very healthy survived just about. But to this day, the cruise line industry is very, very much in the doldrums. However, yes, I do believe that this is an opportunity for people to possibly invest in the cruise line business going forward. And in fact, only a few weeks ago, I received a call from some persons who are actually interested in entering the cruise line business in the future, because once we all get out of this, there will be, I believe, an enormous resurgence in people wanting to go away, people wanting to travel. And of course, the cruise line industry over the last 15 years has gotten away from being an industry associated with possibly retirees.
Yes,
you know, traditionally,
yes,
20 years ago,
yes.
the cruise line industry was associated with elderly people, which of course loved the idea of going on a holiday and staying on board a ship. That has changed dramatically. Today we see cruise lines and cruise liners which are focused on having children, on younger people. So generally speaking, the cruise line business, I am very, very confident will come back with a vengeance, and soon we will start to see these magnificent ships in our harbours with the regularity that we used to see them before.
That's very positive. Do you believe that it will be back in full force by, let's say, 2024?
2024? I should hope so.
Good.
I should hope so. Well, of course, much depends on the vaccination program worldwide, on the control of this virus, and on how careful we must continue to be in the immediate and the near future. It is not the time to let our guard down, irrespective of the fact that the vaccination program has been successful in a number of countries. This is not the time to let one's guard down. But certainly by 2024, I should jolly well hope so.
So we'll be back to normal, I hope, and better than before, I should hope also. What about the environment? What measures are being taken to reduce emissions with regards to cruise liners and pollution?
Well, the environment, of course, is a very sensitive area worldwide. over the last few years, so much more emphasis has been placed on the environment, rightly so. And therefore, there is a global effort in making shipping cleaner. We've seen a tremendous amount of effort and legislation, both on a worldwide basis and from a European dimension. We've had regulations regarding the sulfur content in fuel. We've had tremendous amounts of efforts being made in order to ensure that ships, as they come into port, can plug into the national grid rather than keep their engines running. All of this is happening. It's happening on an international level. It's happening on a local level as well. Naturally, there is also an effort at trying to get ships to use cleaner fuel, such as LNG, which is a cleaner fuel. So there are worldwide efforts intended to make shipping cleaner, to make shipping cleaner. Here we can see a picture of the yard, the Malta dry docks, ex-Malta dry docks. Of course, ship repair, again, is another part of our maritime ventures. I mean, we were very lucky that when the British came to Malta, they built some of the best docks in the Mediterranean. And today, to this day, Malta shipyards are very, very, very successful. Another aspect of Maritime Malta is transhipment of cargo. Again, because of our location, Malta was the ideal place to build a free port. So when you look at these ships that call at Freeport, again, the mother vessels, the large container ships, come from the east, up the Suez, and we've heard a lot about Suez lately. They will discharge their containers at Malta Freeport to be then carried onto what are called feeder vessels to other parts of Europe. And of course, the Malta Freeport, with its geographical location, is one of the most successful parts of Maritime Malta. And this is what I'm trying to explain, Leah, that Maritime Malta, there's so much to it. And this is why I said it affects and we service so much of the international maritime community through all the services that we offer here.
Sure. What, in your opinion, can corporates and the government do? What measures can be taken to ensure a sustainable growth of this sector?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think it's very important at this juncture to explain that one of the reasons why the maritime sector generally is a huge success is because the private sector and government work hand in glove. This has been the case for many, many, many years. It transcends politics. It's apolitical. And I believe that all governments that we've had have worked towards ensuring that the maritime sector continues to grow. Now, when I say that the various governmental authorities and the private sector have worked well together, at this stage, I'd like to mention two organisations in particular. I'd like to mention the Malta Maritime Law Association, because the Malta Maritime Law Association has really tried very hard over the years to make sure that we keep ahead legislatively and assist the authorities in upgrading our laws, in making sure that Malta has the right regulatory framework. And we work very closely with Transport Malta. I would really like to say hello to all our colleagues who work very hard within all the directorates at Transport Malta, be they the ship registry, be they the port authority, be they the yachting sector. We work very closely with them. But then there is another association which I would like to mention, and that is the Malta Maritime Forum. The Malta Maritime Forum is a forum which was set up 5 years ago, and it offers a platform for all the service providers. There we're seeing the Malta Maritime Hub, all the service providers that we've been seeing photographs of, showing the diversity of the maritime sector, have a platform in which to make their voices heard, and which acts as a bridge between the service providers, in fact, and government. So we are very fortunate, and our peers overseas say this of us in Malta, how lucky we are that because of our size, probably, small can be beautiful sometimes.
Yes,
it has its disadvantages, but can be beautiful. Because of our size, we have this ease of being able to communicate. Our voices are heard, not always, But we like to make our voices heard, and there is a very good relationship going with the authorities. There we see a picture of a pilot boat. The pilot, very few people know this, is that individual who boards the vessel before coming into either Marsaxlokk or Grand Harbour, because both those harbours are compulsory pilotage areas. Every ship coming in needs to have a pilot on board, because no matter how wonderful the master or captain is, no matter how experienced, it is the pilot who has the immediate knowledge of the harbour itself. And there we see the pilot climbing the pilot ladder. It's not for the faint-hearted, I can tell you.
Absolutely not. Can you describe some highlights of cases in your career?
Well, I like to say, Leah, I've been really, really fortunate in that I have been able, I've had the privilege of being able to assist in a variety of cases. With marine litigation, it's the sort of area, because of our services, where I would get involved in casualty work, ranging from explosions to collisions to towage to salvage operations, to also assisting with the enforcement, what we call enforcement, of creditors' rights against vessels, because, you know, not everything is honky-dory and sweetness and light. There will be situations where creditors don't get paid, so we need to arrest the ship. Sometimes it's not enough. It's not enough to just arrest the vessel. The creditor, the owner, remains in default because, unfortunately, he does not have the money to pay. So we will then need to sell the vessel in a judicial sale. And so we get involved in that sort of thing as well. And at this juncture, I would also like to say that Maltese law, when it comes to the maritime sector, is very robust. It gives creditors, it gives mortgagees, and mortgagees are those persons who typically would lend money to the ship owner so to enable him to buy his ship. And Maltese law gives the mortgagee a great deal of comfort, because if the owner doesn't pay the mortgage, then the mortgagee can take possession of the vessel and actually sell that vessel in a judicial sale. And here I would like to say that the courts, you know, courts come under a lot of criticism on a number of occasions. However, I have to say that as far as the maritime sector is concerned, they have very frequently performed very well indeed, and they have given a great deal of comfort to investors in Malta. There we see the Malta Flag at the back of a celebrity vessel. The Malta Flag is the largest flag in Europe and the 6th largest worldwide. And that doesn't only happen because, as some people think, the Maltese law offers the owner financial advantages. Today, the financial advantage is offered by most flags in the world, so we're nothing special. But the advantage of the Malta Flag goes beyond that. We are English speaking. As I said, the law gives us a great deal of comfort, gives the owners a great deal of comfort, but it gives the lenders a great deal of comfort, as I've just explained.
Yes.
And the authorities work very well. They listen to us, we listen to them. There's a good synergy. And the flag administration is open on a 24/7 basis.
I mean, it's very complex, but it seems to be very efficiently managed, I think,
We like
the way
to
you're
think-
describing it.
We like to think we are efficient. We have our bad days, of course, like everything else, but
What, in your opinion, what impact has the Brexit trade deal had on the industry?
well, Brexit has affected the shipping industry in a variety of ways. Of course, we all read the papers, so we all know how it has affected the carriage of goods. Gone are the days where where there is free movement of trade. Of course, so any containers, any goods coming into Malta require import licenses and vice versa. That has, especially initially, led to a clogging up of traffic. And apart from that, from a legislative point of view, it has also affected the manner in which judgments given in England are enforced in Malta, because before we would do that under the umbrella of what is called the Brussels recast. There was an EU convention which applied to England and Malta because we were both members of the same club. And this was a convention that would tell you how you go about enforcing judgments and jurisdiction. I'm being very, making things simple here. So we have had to figure out how English judgments would have to be enforced in Malta. And we are now resorting to a very old law that was law in Malta before the European Union and vice versa. So there are a number of issues which, of course, Brexit has had an impact on.
Yes, but it's obviously being very well managed also.
Well, it's being managed.
Yes.
We're learning. It's a new experience. Nobody taught us about Brexit. It's work in progress. But the good thing, the best thing is to try to understand the problem and to try and give the best advice under the circumstances.
Can we refer to the coronavirus, which obviously hit the sector very badly? How do you see us coming out of that?
COVID affected the shipping industry very badly for a number of reasons. Initially, when we saw that China stopped importing raw materials because the Chinese were not going to their workplace. You remember, we saw all these pictures of all these factories, and we all know that so much stuff is manufactured in China. The Chinese weren't going to their workplace. So raw materials stopped being imported. Once you stop importing into China those enormous amounts of raw materials, that means there was extra tonnage not carrying goods. No goods were being manufactured in China, so there were no ships and containers. There was no need for ships and containers to export out of China. So we had a glut of shipping in the doldrums, too many containers. We are now coming out of that cycle in the reverse order. Now suddenly, and that is the beauty of shipping, it's very cyclical. Now there aren't enough ships and enough containers in order to carry all the products that are being manufactured. But of course, COVID had a terrible effect on crew. We mustn't forget that. There is the human element here. We're not just talking about pieces of steel. These huge objects need to be manned. So because of COVID, crew members couldn't leave their ships. They couldn't leave the vessels. They couldn't have a substitution of crew because they couldn't actually get into airports because of the restriction in travel. So of course, COVID affected so many activities. It affected us in Malta. There were less ships coming into Malta. We had issues with people within the port areas really needing to be vaccinated because of the contact they had with others. So, this was all part and parcel of a great big issue.
Yes.
Not to speak, of course, of the biggest tragedy of all those people who lost their lives as a result of COVID. I myself had friends who lost relatives, and of course your heart goes out to these people.
Absolutely.
When you see the human side of this
Absolutely.
whole affair.
I really thank you for coming today, but I'd like to close. Perhaps you could share a positive message with our audience today.
A positive message, certainly. Well, I think that we're here to talk about the maritime sector. And I think that we are super fortunate that we are surrounded by this beautiful sea, which from time immemorial has provided us on these islands, with a very important industry. This is not an industry that happened yesterday. The maritime industry, with all its facets, is an industry which is synonymous to Malta. It is an industry which the Malta Maritime Forum actually conducted a survey on and a study on called Maritime Malta. And it is something which employs an enormous amount of people. We should take care of it. We should take care of it in all its facets. But most importantly, Leah, I think we need to understand that nobody owes us a living. The world does not owe us a living. We need to deliver. We need to deliver on the services which we can offer, and we need to give good value for money. And I think that if everybody pulls his weight, acts in a professional manner, and gives good value for money, then I think that it's very nice times for this entire Maritime Malta,
Thank you
of
very
which
much.
I'm so proud to be part of.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Thank you
Dr.
for the
Fenech.
invitation.
Thank you for coming today. I am today with Dr. Fenech. Thank you for watching. Please send your comments, as usual, to the number you've seen during this program. I'll see you next week at the same time. Good evening.